I stood in the dimly lit elevator of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, Seattle's crown jewel, staring at my reflection in the polished brass panels. My $40 thrift store dress clung awkwardly to my frame, the hem slightly frayed from one too many washes. My dark hair was pulled into a messy bun, and my sneakers, God, my sneakers, looked like they'd survived a marathon. In 10 minutes, I'd walk into another Harper family dinner, where my siblings would parade their glittering lives, and I'd smile through the sting of their jabs. The rain-slicked streets of Seattle glimmered outside, a city humming with tech, dreams, and ambition. My family, the Harpers, were its royalty, kings and queens of biotech, their name plastered on lab buildings and gala banners. Me? I was Elena Harper, 32, the odd one out, the freelancer they pitied. Still designing? Those little websites? They'd smirk, as if my life was a punchline. They didn't know. Nobody did. As the elevator climbed, my phone buzzed. A text from my assistant. Nexus Labs board meeting confirmed. 200 millimeters acquisition on track. I shoved it back into my tote, my heart racing. Tonight, I'd sit across from my family, their voices dripping with condescension, while they bragged about a $100 million deal they thought they'd won. A deal with my company. A deal that needed my signature. The elevator dinged, doors sliding open to the rooftop restaurant, all glass and candlelight. There they were, my parents, my brother Marcus, my sister Chloe, draped in designer labels, laughing like they owned the world. "Elena, you actually showed up," Chloe called, her voice sharp as her stilettos. I forced a smile, stepping forward. They had no idea what was coming. "Stick around. You won't want to miss this." I slid into a velvet chair at the rooftop table, the Seattle skyline sparkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The air smelled of truffle oil and money, and my family, the Harpers, fit right in. My parents, Richard and Vivian, sat at the head, their faces glowing with that polished pride only biotech moguls could pull off. My brother Marcus, 35, leaned back in his tailored suit, his Rolex catching the candlelight as he swirled a glass of Bordeaux. My sister Chloe, 28, was mid-story, her diamond earrings glinting as she laughed, her phone propped up for the perfect Instagram shot. And then there was me, Elena Harper, the one they called the family disappointment. At 32, I was the odd piece in their perfect puzzle. I lived in a cramped Capitol Hill apartment, rode a second-hand bike through Seattle's drizzle, and wore thrift store finds that Chloe wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole. To them, I was just a freelancer, scraping by on graphic design, gigs or whatever they imagined I did on my laptop. "Still chasing those little projects, Elena?" Marcus asked, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. I nodded, sipping my water. They didn't need to know the truth. Not yet. The truth was, I wasn't just a freelancer. I was the founder and CEO of Nexus Labs, a tech company revolutionizing AI for medical diagnostics. My days weren't spent tweaking website fonts. They were filled with boardroom negotiations, million-dollar acquisitions, and late-night coding. Sessions, but I kept it all under wraps. LLCs, proxies, a carefully crafted alias. Why? Because the Harpers only respected what they could parade, and I wasn't here to perform for their applause. Harper Biotech, my family's empire, was Seattle's darling. Think gleaming labs, TED Talks, and splashy fundraisers. Marcus, the golden boy, had just inked a $50 million partnership with a European firm, and he made sure everyone knew it. "It's about legacy," he said, glancing at me like I'd never understand. Chloe, the influencer princess, chimed in about her latest gala tossing her hair. "You should come, Elena." "Oh, wait. Can you afford the ticket?" Her laugh was a blade, and my mother's sigh cut deeper. "Elena, if you'd just apply yourself, maybe find a real career, you wouldn't be like this." I traced the rim of my glass, my face calm, but my chest tight. They saw my scuffed sneakers, my faded tote bag, and assumed I was nothing. They didn't see the encrypted laptop in that tote, the one I'd used to build Nexus Labs from a failing startup into a powerhouse. They didn't know I was the E. Harper they'd been emailing, the one they thought was some tech titan flying in to sign their precious $100 million deal. As Chloe launched into a story about her latest brand deal, I let my mind drift to tomorrow's meeting, the one where they'd face me across a boardroom table, their jaws on the floor. For now, I'd play the part they'd written for me, the black sheep, the failure. But the script was about to flip. The clink of wine glasses, and Chloe's high-pitched laugh filled the rooftop restaurant, but I barely heard it. My family was in their element, tossing around words like market share and brand equity, as if they were born to rule Seattle's biotech scene. I sat quietly, picking at my overpriced salad, while their voices washed over me like a cold tide. Marcus leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with the kind of smugness that made my skin crawl. "Big news, everyone," he announced, pausing for effect. "Harper Biotech is finalizing a $100 million contract with Nexus Labs, the AI diagnostics firm. Huge win for us." My fork froze midair. Nexus Labs. My Nexus Labs. I kept my face neutral, but my pulse kicked up a notch. Chloe clapped her hands, her bracelets jangling. "That's massive, Marcus. Who's their CEO? Some tech bro in a hoodie?" Marcus shrugged, swirling his wine. "Some guy named E. Harper. I've been emailing him for months, sharp but cold. Typical genius type." I nearly choked on my water. E. Harper. That was me, my alias, my shield. They were bragging about a deal they didn't even understand, a deal that hinged on my approval. "Sounds like a big shot," my mother said, her tone dripping with pride for Marcus. Then her eyes flicked to me, sharpening. "Elena, you could learn from this. Maybe if you networked more, you'd do something substantial." Chloe snickered, snapping a selfie with her dessert. "Yeah, Elle, maybe stop fiddling with your little freelance gigs and aim higher." I forced a smile, my fingers tightening around my glass. "I'm doing okay," I said softly. "Paying my bills?" Marcus snorted. "Barely, I bet." They didn't know. They couldn't. While they were busy flaunting their wealth, Chloe's $5,000 gala tickets, Marcus's waterfront condo, I'd been building something real. It started 5 years ago when I was 27, working for a tiny AI startup in Fremont. They had a brilliant algorithm for detecting early-stage diseases, but their finances were a mess. When they teetered on bankruptcy, I saw my shot. I scraped together every penny I had, used my design skills to revamp their platform, and bought controlling interest for a fraction of its potential. That was the birth of Nexus Labs. I kept the founders coding, let them dream, while I handled the numbers, the investors, the growth. Now, we powered half the diagnostic tech in the Pacific Northwest, and no one, not even my family, knew I was the one pulling the strings. My phone buzzed in my tote, a faint hum under the table. I glanced down, shielding the screen. A text from my assistant, Jordan. "Confirmed. $200 acquisition of Meditech closed. Board needs your sign-off by noon." My heart thumped. This was the kind of deal that could reshape healthcare, and I was orchestrating it from a beat-up canvas bag. "Elena, really?" my mother hissed, her voice slicing through the chatter. "Put that phone away. It's rude. You don't have anything that important going on." I slid it back, biting my tongue. If only she knew I was greenlighting a buy deal 10 times bigger than Marcus's precious contract. Chloe's voice cut in, syrupy sweet. "Oh, Elena, you have to come to my gala next month. Harper Biotech's hosting. It's $7,000 a seat, but I'm sure we can sneak you in. Wouldn't want you to feel left out." Her smile was all teeth, and Marcus chuckled, leaning back like he was watching a comedy. I thought of the embossed invitation on my desk, addressed to E. Harper, CEO, Nexus Labs. I'd been invited. As a VIP, not a pity guest. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice calm, but my mind racing. As the waiter cleared plates, Marcus launched into a monologue about his genius negotiations with Nexus Labs. "Their CEO's flying in tomorrow." "To sign," he said, puffing out his chest. "Only top-tier firms get deals like this. Says a lot about Harper Biotech, doesn't it?" My father nodded, beaming. "It's about time we showed Seattle who's leading the pack." I took a slow sip of my sparkling water, my eyes meeting theirs. "Sounds like a big day," I said, lightly. "You'll meet E. Harper tomorrow," Chloe smirked, tossing her hair. "Hope you don't get lost on your way to your little freelance desk, Elle." They laughed, clinking glasses, while I mentally ran through tomorrow's agenda, the meeting where they'd sit across from me, their failure of a sister, begging for my signature to save their sinking ship. I dabbed my napkin at my lips, hiding a smile. Let them enjoy their spotlight for one more night. Tomorrow the stage was mine. The next morning, Seattle woke up under a blanket of gray clouds, the kind of drizzle that made the city feel like it was holding its breath. I stood in my Capitol Hill apartment, slipping into a tailored charcoal suit that cost more than my rent. The silk blouse beneath it whispered against my skin, and my heels, sleek, black, custom-made, clicked with purpose on the hardwood floor. Gone was the Elena in thrift store dresses and scuffed sneakers. Today, I was E. Harper, CEO of Nexus Labs, and I was ready to rewrite the Harper family script. Jordan, my executive assistant, met me at the curb in a blacked-out SUV, a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. "Everything's set," he said, his voice steady. "Harper Biotech's team is expecting Nexus Labs' CEO at 10 a.m. sharp." I nodded, smoothing my skirt as we pulled toward downtown. This wasn't just a meeting. This was a reckoning. The Harper Biotech headquarters loomed like a glass monolith, its lobby a shrine to wealth, marble floors, abstract sculptures, and a chandelier that screamed excess. As I stepped through the revolving doors at 9:55, the receptionist's eyes widened. "Miss Harper?" she stammered, scanning her tablet. "I don't see you on the guest list." I smiled coolly. "Check again. Nexus Labs." Her fingers froze, then scrambled as my name appeared under VIP clearance. "Of course, ma'am. The executive elevator is this way." Heads turned as I crossed the lobby, my heels echoing like a metronome. Jordan trailed behind, his presence a quiet reminder of the empire I'd built. The elevator ride to the 45th floor was silent, just the hum of machinery and the weight of 5 years of secrecy. Through the glass walls of the boardroom, I saw them, my family. Marcus paced in his pinstripe suit, tugging at his tie. Chloe scrolled her phone, her lips pursed. My parents sat at the head, their faces tight with anticipation, oblivious to the storm about to hit. Jordan checked his watch. "They're expecting Nexus Labs' CEO at 10 mo. You ready?" I gave a faint smile. I've been ready since I was 27. At 10 hour sharp, Jordan pushed open the boardroom doors. The room fell silent, like someone had hit mute. 4 pairs of eyes snapped to me. Curiosity, then confusion, then something close to panic. "Elena?" Marcus croaked, his voice cracking like thin ice. "What the hell are you doing here?" "We're about to start a major meeting." "I know," I said, setting my briefcase on the polished table with a soft thud. I flipped the latches open, my movements deliberate. "That's why I'm here." My mother's gaze narrowed, her fingers clutching her gold bracelet like a lifeline. "Elena, this isn't the time for games," she snapped. My father's voice was clipped, authoritative. "Leave. Now." I slid a stack of contracts across the glass, my expression calm as a still lake. "It's not a game," I said. "The CEO of Nexus Labs is already here." Silence crashed over the room, thick and suffocating. Chloe's phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto the table. Marcus blinked, his face paling. "This is absurd," he sputtered. "Where's E. Harper?" I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. "You're looking at her." I reached into my portfolio and placed a single business card in front of them. Matte black, minimalist, just my name in silver ink. E. Harper, founder and CEO, Nexus Labs. My father snatched it up, his hands trembling. "This is impossible," he growled, his face turning a shade of red that clashed with his navy blazer. "Nexus Labs is worth billions. You're just a freelancer." Jordan stepped forward, placing sealed folders in front of each of them. "Investment agreements," I said, my voice smooth as steel. "I suggest your legal team reviews Section 8.3 closely. It details compliance terms. Breach them, and the deal's off." Chloe tore into her folder, her manicured nails shaking as she flipped pages. "This can't be right," she whispered. You design websites. You're nobody." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Not since I was 27. That startup I worked for? I bought it, rebuilt it, scaled it. Nexus Labs now owns stakes in over 60 companies, including the ones underwriting your gala venue, Chloe." Her jaw dropped, her eyes wide with horror. Marcus sank into his chair, his tie askew. "The loans," he muttered. "The ones we leveraged for the new lab?" "Held by Nexus Labs," I finished, my tone even. "Technically, you've been working for me for months." My mother's voice quavered, barely audible. "But your bike, your apartment, you wear those awful thrift store clothes." I shrugged. "Some of us invest in impact, not image. Power doesn't need a spotlight." My father's face darkened, his voice low and acidic. "Why hide this from us?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "Because you only value what you can control. And I was done being your punching bag." I stood, smoothing my suit, every movement precise. "Now, about that $100 million contract with Harper Biotech. It's a generous offer, but it comes with conditions. Shall we start with leadership restructuring?" Marcus's head snapped up. "What?" I turned to him, my smile faint but sharp. "You're off the project, effective immediately. Your numbers were inflated, and I've got the receipts to prove it." Chloe gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You can't do this. This is my family's company." "Actually," I said, flipping to the final page of the contract, "you've been burning cash faster than you can raise it. This deal isn't a win, it's a lifeline, and it's mine to give or take." The room was a graveyard of stunned faces. Marcus's hands shook as he stared at the contract. Chloe's eyes glistened with unshed tears. My parents sat frozen, their empire crumbling under the weight of their own arrogance. I set a sleek fountain pen beside the contract. "Sign or don't," I said. "But without my signature, Harper Biotech won't last the quarter." One by one, they reached for the pen, their pride shattering with every scratch of ink. I watched, my heart steady, my mask finally off. The black sheep was done hiding. Now, I was the one calling the shots. As I stepped out of the Harper Biotech boardroom, the Seattle skyline stretched before me, a mosaic of steel and glass shimmering through the drizzle. The weight I'd carried for years, the sting of every smirk, every "you'll never amount to anything" jab, lifted like fog burning off Puget Sound. I wasn't just Elena Harper, the freelancer in thrift store dresses. I was E. Harper, CEO of Nexus Labs, the woman who'd turned their empire upside down with a single signature. For the first time, I felt free. The fallout was swift. Marcus, his ego bruised, was reassigned to a strategic consulting role, Harper Biotech's polite way of sidelining him. His precious $100 million project now reported to my team at Nexus Labs, and I made sure the analysts who'd done the real work got credit. Chloe's gala? She lost control of it when I revealed Nexus Labs owned the venue, a sleek waterfront pavilion I'd quietly acquired last year. She posted a cryptic Instagram story about betrayal, but the guest list still had my name at the top, as a donor, not a guest. My parents, masters of rewriting history, started name-dropping their visionary daughter at their country club brunches. "We always knew Elena was special," my mother told her friends, as if she hadn't spent a decade sighing at my sneakers. I let them talk. Their approval meant nothing now. I'd spent years hiding my success, not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't need their spotlight to shine. Nexus Labs wasn't just a company. It was proof that you could build something world-changing without shouting about it. We were saving lives. Our AI caught diseases before they became death sentences, and that was worth more than any gala ticket or Rolex. Life didn't change much, at least on the surface. I still rode my beat-up bike through Capitol Hill, weaving past coffee shops and murals. I still shopped at Target, snagging deals on sweaters and dish soap. But I also had my sanctuaries, a penthouse overlooking Lake Washington, bought in cash. Its floor-to-ceiling windows framing sunsets that felt like secrets. I kept my old apartment for balance, a reminder of where I'd started. My trusty bike? I donated it to a local women's shelter, a small nod to the scrappy Elena who'd clawed her way to the top. A month later, I hosted a family dinner, not at some overpriced restaurant, but in Nexus Labs' executive suite, 60 floors above Seattle. The space was understated elegance, polished wood, modern art, and a view that made the city look like it was bowing at our feet. My family arrived, their usual swagger dialed down. Marcus fidgeted with his cufflinks, Chloe clutched her purse like a shield, and my parents' smiles were tight, forced. They marveled at the view, the curated wine list, the quiet wealth that didn't scream but whispered. I raised a glass of Pinot Noir, its price tag more than Chloe's handbag. "To building something real," I said, my voice steady. No one spoke. For once, the Harpers had nothing to say. That night, as I stood alone on the suite's balcony, the city lights flickering below, I thought about every dinner where they'd mocked me, my clothes, my little gigs, my silence. I'd answered with my work, not my words. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother, her first in months. "Why didn't you tell us?" I stared at the message, the wind tugging at my hair. "Because you wouldn't have listened," I typed, then deleted it. Some truths didn't need to be spoken. If you're still here, thank you for seeing me. The Elena they dismissed, the one they called a failure. I learned you don't need applause to matter. You don't need a stage to build an empire. I'm not special. I'm just someone who kept going, who turned "you're nothing" into "watch me." If you've ever been underestimated, if your family or anyone else made you feel small, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. Let's lift each other up. Hit that subscribe button, not for the drama, but for the truth. The people they mock the loudest often build the strongest legacies. You don't owe anyone proof of your worth. You owe yourself the life you've dreamed of. Build it quietly, relentlessly, on your own terms. Success doesn't roar, it hums, steady and unshakable, until the world has no choice but to listen. And one last thing. I still shop at Target. Because real power doesn't perform. It just is. Stick around for more stories like this. You never know who's writing the next chapter, and it might just be you. The boardroom doors closed behind me. With a soft click, and I stepped into the elevator, the Seattle skyline unfolding like a promise through the glass. The rain had stopped, leaving the city washed clean, its lights glinting off the Space Needle like stars caught in a net. For years, I'd carried my family's words like stones. Every "you're nothing." Every "why can't you be more?" Like Marcus? But today I let them go. I wasn't just Elena Harper, the black sheep in a thrift store dress. I was E. Harper, CEO of Nexus Labs, the woman who'd flipped their world upside down with a pen and a truth they couldn't ignore. I was free. Back at Harper Biotech, the pieces fell fast. Marcus, his pride shredded, was shuffled into a consulting role, a fancy title for a desk job under my team's oversight. The $100 million contract he'd bragged about now funneled through Nexus Labs, and I made damn sure the engineers and coders who'd built the tech got the spotlight, not his inflated ego. Chloe's gala, her crown jewel, crumbled when I casually mentioned Nexus Labs owned the waterfront venue, a glass pavilion I'd bought on a whim last spring. She tried to save face with a tearful Instagram live, muttering about family loyalty. But the VIP list still had my name in bold, not as her +1, but as the keynote donor. My parents? They did what they always did, rewrote the past. At their next charity auction, my mother clutched her wine glass and cooed to her friends. Oh, Elena was always our brilliant one, just needed time to bloom. As if she hadn't. Spent years rolling her eyes at my bike and my little gigs. I didn't correct them. Their validation was just noise now. I'd built Nexus Labs not for their applause, but for the lives it saved. Our AI catching cancers and heart defects, before they could steal another birthday. That was my legacy, not some biotech dynasty's logo. I'd hidden my success for years, not out of fear, but because I didn't need their stage to shine. Real power doesn't beg for a spotlight. It builds one, brick by quiet brick. Life stayed, simple, at least on the outside. I still pedaled through Capitol Hill's funky streets, past record stores and rainbow crosswalks, dodging puddles on my new bike, a teal cruiser I'd splurged on at a local shop. I still wandered Target's aisles, tossing clearance socks and coffee mugs into my cart. But I had my havens too, a penthouse perched above Lake Washington, its wraparound deck framing sunsets that painted the water gold. I kept my old apartment as an anchor, a reminder of the Elena who'd bet everything on a failing startup. That old bike I used to ride. I gave it to a Seattle women's shelter, a small thank you to the city that had carried me through. 6 weeks later, I invited my family to dinner. Not some stuffy restaurant, but my executive suite at Nexus Labs, 60 floors up, where the city sprawled like a dream below. The room was pure understated power, slate gray walls, a single Rothko print, and a table set with crystal that didn't scream wealth but hummed it. My family walked in, their usual swagger gone. Marcus's jaw tightened as he eyed the view. Chloe clutched her clutch like it might save her. My parents' smiles were brittle, their voices hushed. They gushed over the Pinot Noir, $800 a bottle, more than Chloe's shoes, but their praise felt hollow. I raised my glass, the city lights reflected in its curve. To building what lasts, I said, my voice soft but unyielding. They didn't respond. For the first time, the Harpers were speechless. Later, alone on the suite's balcony, the night air cool against my skin, I checked my phone. A text from my father, short and stiff. "We should have seen it. Why keep it from us?" I leaned against the railing, the hum of Seattle rising from below. Fairy horns, distant music, life. I typed a reply, then deleted it, because you only heard what glittered. Some truths were better left unsaid. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking this road with me. I was the one they laughed at, the one they wrote off as a failure. But I learned you don't need a crowd to matter. You don't need their cheers to build something unstoppable. If your family, your coworkers, or anyone's ever made you feel like you're not enough, I want to hear it. Drop your story in the comments. Let's show the world what the black sheep can do. Hit subscribe, not for the drama, but for the real stuff. The truth that the ones they mock often rise the highest. You don't owe anyone proof of your greatness. You owe yourself the life you've always imagined. Build it, step by step, in your own way. Success doesn't need to shout. It grows in the quiet until it's too big to ignore. Oh, and yeah, I still shop at Target. Because power isn't about what you flaunt. It's about who you are when no one's watching. Stick with me for more stories like this, The next one might be yours.